Welcome back to Eye on Digital Marketing. This is episode 47. I have a very special guest today. I am joined by Kelly Merbler, the founder of the Kelly Merbler Company. Kelly, how are you this morning?
I am doing amazing, Chuck. It's a great way to start off my week here with the MoreVisibility team.
I know. Happy Monday to you. This is your second time here in the office. We're going for round two, which we're going to dive into those details very shortly here on the podcast. Before we get into that, don't forget you can follow us on social media at MoreVisibility, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. And if you have not visited our website and signed up for our newsletter just yet, you can do so. You're going to get excellent tips from our industry experts sent out on a monthly basis. So with that being said, Kelly, before we dive into our topic today, which is how to use your team's strengths and how things have changed since 2020 and everybody working remotely and you being kind of an expert on how to hone in a team and a company's strengths and really get an organization moving towards one goal, give us a little bit about your background. How did you get started in this type of work and why are you so passionate about it?
Great question, Chuck. And I got started in this by default, honestly. I worked in my corporate job right out of college for 21 years with one company. Started as an individual contributor, and then in a sales organization, when you're a top producer, what happens when a management job gets opened? You get tapped on the shoulder because you had high numbers. So I was good at driving numbers, so I guess I was selected as a manager next in line to help drive more numbers. And through the following years of being a leader of teams, actually I'll really say I was more of a manager when I first started. I wasn't leading people, I was managing KPIs. I really learned how the importance of connecting with my team really mattered when it came to driving the KPIs. And I learned that my focus was solely on driving KPIs, and if I wasn't focusing on understanding the people that drive the KPIs, then I wasn't going to go very far. And so I learned by default by failing as being a manager. And someone gave me the opportunity to go through a leadership program, and I was so grateful because part of that program was why I fell in love with Strengths. Clifton Strengths was a part of me understanding more about myself, and once I worked with someone to understand more about myself through my strengths, game changer. Yeah. I brought it right back to my team and started implementing it.
That's so interesting you use that example. I'm a huge sports fan, and I was just watching some press conferences from some NFL coaches over the past weekend, and they were even talking about the shift in how they manage their teams, where it used to be so much X's and O's. Yeah. And now if you really want to get the best plays out of your team, you have to connect with your players. It's a different way of coaching. So can you tell us a little bit about why I wouldn't even say why you think, why you know that strengths are so important? Because I really feel like from talking to a lot of managers and executive leaders, you would think that, hey, maybe from your standpoint, that's the first thing you go to is find your team's strengths. But a lot of times when someone's trying to figure out how to improve their organization, they're looking for the weak points, which isn't bad. But why is identifying strengths so important on your team?
It's very important because it really plays into engagement of an employee and also well-being of an employee. And look at this world that we're in right now, post-COVID, and still digging out from being in COVID in the organizations. Yeah. And so many employees are burnout. They're exhausted. There was a survey by Deloitte of 1,000 employees that said 77% of employees are feeling some sort of burnout today, and 70% of those employees are saying that their organizations and their leaders aren't really doing anything to help them in this situation. Yeah. So why I feel this is so important, and I'm really loving this work, especially now more than ever, is because I look at how many times in my role as a leader, people and my leadership also saw me as being good at certain things. And so there's a misconception out there around identifying strengths with your employees. You may see an employee that looks good, like they're doing good work in a certain area and they produce good work, but unless you really understand if that work energizes them
Sure.
as a leader, then you may assume they have a strength when honestly you're giving them more work that actually taps into an area of a weakness that's actually draining them.
Would you say that just because you identify that someone is good at something, it may not be a strength of theirs? Is that where that overlap usually happens, where you have to evaluate, are they good at it and are they passionate? Does it energize them, and not just are they good at it? Because that could be a little misleading, right?
It sure can. And I did it, and a lot of my leaders did it as well, because we just think we see someone being good at something, that means they have a strength in an area.
Yeah.
But it has to check 2 boxes. And Gallup's definition of a strength is, first, we have to have a talent in it. And a talent is defined as a natural, reoccurring thought, pattern, or behavior that can be productively applied. So we've got to start with a talent in something. And then the second thing we have to check in order for it to be a strength is it has to energize us, actually strengthen us when we do it. And there are a lot of things that I was good at in my job, hence I got more of that work, but it never energized me. And at the end of the day, I was depleted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense, speaking from personal experience, and kind of, being here at MoreVisibility and doing the first round 1 workshop with you, and we're going to do it as a company here today for round 2, which we're all excited about. It was kind of a unique time, and I think a good time to do it, because since 2020 has happened, I look outside of this room today to the office behind us, and there's basically everybody from our company here today.
Yeah.
That was every single day. It was like that. 2020 came. We know the challenges the pandemic brought to all of us in some type of way, but everybody got dispersed in this remote workforce, and it changed the dynamic of how we work together. It changed the dynamic of not having that face-to-face interaction. And a lot of conversations, I wouldn't say got pushed to the side, but sometimes it felt like you just got your work done and you logged off and you went about your day. And so it was interesting to do round 1 when you came in, because a lot of us, I think in our minds, well, we know our strengths. We could probably write them down on a piece of paper. But what we found and what you evaluated was, I think, more in depth, and I would say more tailored than any of us thought, which was great, especially when we had our breakout sessions. So what I'm getting to, just if you could talk about from your experience in working with different groups and companies really pre-post COVID, where we're now in this remote workforce, is it more important to find your team's strengths now that they may be dispersed around the country or even further out than that?
It's an excellent point, Chuck. And I can tell you, a lot of the work that I'm doing is with 100% remote teams.
Yeah.
And these leaders have seen the value of understanding more about the people that they are responsible for leading. And when you think about it, when we're no longer in the office where that culture, you can see it every day and talk to someone at the water cooler, all of a sudden that's gone.
Right.
And then leaders are trying to figure out, how do I keep people engaged? How do I keep my team still connected, where we all come together and we're working towards a common goal from all over the country, all over the world?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the teams that I've done this with have found a lot of power in this, because there is a unity when you start talking in language of strengths.
Right.
And there may have been a really great team that already existed, like MoreVisibility has always been a solid team. But how do you take that team that's now spread out and keep them still cohesive, where there is a common language of what is making you successful? And every one of you on this team has something that is a gift you have within you. And how are you using that in this remote world that can be celebrated and recognized in that remote world, in that remote dynamic, when you come together, let's say in a weekly meeting or a quarterly meeting, however often you're meeting, where you initially can celebrate, you have competition as your number one.
Yes, I do.
So competition is your number one. And how has competition helped your team and your unit be successful? And let's automatically talk about that when we come together or we have our one-on-ones. Instead of thinking as, all right, Chuck, so we're going to work on your individual development plan. Let's figure out what you're not doing so well in. I've done that for years.
See, I'm already like turned off by just that comment.
Yeah.
Like if you were, my boss, I would sit down, I would listen, and I would work on the weakness.
Sure.
But you just saying that off the bat, let's talk about what you're not good at. I'm already a little bit disengaged, right?
Yeah.
Because I know it's going to be kind of a difficult conversation, right? Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I've had people in meetings that know my strength, and especially after we did round one, now they know how to trigger me. Now they'll just say, Chuck, I'll do this better than you. Knowing that now I'm going to have to do it better than them, right? So it benefits everybody.
Yeah.
So now everybody wins. But yeah, it is definitely interesting. Anything else that you've seen just from a remote perspective that's important to keep in mind when kind of evaluating your team and their strengths?
Yeah, I think communication. A lot of what teams struggle with and organizations struggle with is how do you keep communication out there so everyone feels a part of something. And I love what Strengths does. It sets the culture and the preface for looking at the good in people first and communicating the successes first. It's not that we're never going to look at weaknesses. That's not reality.
Right.
You're going to have to work on
even
your
in
weaknesses.
life. That's not reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. But learning the language of strengths, because it does, if it's executed correctly, and I say that with bold letters there, executed correctly, where an organization and a leadership team like MoreVisibility is doing, you're not just going to do a one and done workshop. You are going to start to create a sustainable culture that becomes an ecosystem, and the language that you are all sharing in teamwork, in one-on-ones, in performance management, in values, in social media, where you are building a network of strengths coaches and champions. And it doesn't mean that you're forgetting about weaknesses or overlooking poor performance, but you're learning the language of strengths enables the discussion about barriers that may exist and a misalignment of talent that may exist, where it becomes a safe space to talk about it.
Safe space to talk. Yeah, I like that, because one of my next questions was, do you think from your experience and what you've seen, it actually makes the conversation easier if you have to ever address weaknesses when you've been focused on your strengths and you've built an ecosystem and you have that language and that culture in place? Does it become then easier? Like you said, we're never going to ignore the weak points. We're going to work on it. It may be a lower percentage or it may not be as often, but they are important to know. Does that conversation become easier if you've really built that culture of strength already?
I think it all comes down to trust in the leadership that you're working with.
Yeah.
And if you are a leader that has gained the trust of the team that you lead, then naturally people are going to be inclined to open up more with someone. And when I feel I can be honest and authentic with my leader and say, listen, this project you have me working on, I will give it my all. But in order for me to be my best, so I can give you my best work for the organization, let's talk about where my strengths fall into this and where there is a misalignment, that there's some draining going on here, and who do we have on the team based on what we've learned about everybody, who can contribute to this project to help me as a complementary partner in the areas that I'm not going to be my best.
Right. I have an interesting question I like to pose to you. I'm sure you've gotten this somewhere along the way. Let's say I own a company and I'm a smaller company. I have 25, 30 people in my company, and we do a strengths evaluation, and the whole team is on board. And I figure out, everyone on the team knows their top list of strengths now. We're building this culture. We're building this language. It feels good. But there's just some things in my company that I still need done on a daily basis. And what I figured out was that nobody in my company actually has a passion for that or has a strength for that. So now I know that I'm going to have to maybe go out and find someone who does. But in the interim, I still need that work to be done and be done well for the company to have success. But now as an executive, I really now know, it's not a guess, that nobody out there really likes doing that. How do I handle that situation?
Yeah, that is a question that a lot of leaders will ask, and that's a fair question because you got to get the work done.
Right.
You're not running a nonprofit. You've got to make profitability for your organization and serve your clients. So as we get deeper into strengths, and this is where we're starting to go today with more visibility, and we will continue on after this, is the key is we have to first understand ourselves.
Right.
Where are we at our best and where are we not at our best? And then as a leader, we have to understand that as well. Now, the more I learned about my strengths and where my inner genius was and my brilliance, the more I learned how I could leverage what I'm already good at when I had to move through a challenge that I wasn't good at. Mm-hmm. So let's just say, Chuck, for you have competition.
Yeah.
And let's say you are given a project that has nothing to do with using your competition. Mm-hmm. What's another strength that you have? Give me your top 5.
If you remember, give me a couple. Put me on the spot. They're on my desk. I was so focused on my top one, I forgot.
And I love your number one. It's an amazing strength. So let's just say you have positivity in your top 5.
Sure.
So how can we leverage what you're also already good at? You've got genius there to move through this challenge using positivity.
I love that.
And we're not asking you to change who you are.
Right.
We're asking you to look within yourself to say, you've got to move through this. It's not an area of strength, but what else do you have that you can borrow to switch that way you approach it and then move forward with that lens if this one isn't being used?
I love that. View it from a different lens. You know, if you went through the evaluation, you know your top list of strengths, and if you don't like doing something, that's fine. It's great to figure that out. But you've probably also been attacking that from a different lens than what your strengths are. You've probably been going into that situation being like, here we go again. This is not going to be fun. But you're saying if you tailor that to your strengths, not saying it's going to be the end all be all and the best thing ever, but you're going to at least be able to use what you're good at to get to that end result.
Absolutely. It's just shifting into a different gear that's already there instead of trying to just be what you're not. For example, I'm an activator, and one of my strengths as an activator is I'm really good at creating momentum in a team, and I'm really good at creating that energy to get people to take action.
Right.
If that isn't being used when I'm working on a project, I'm feeling a little disengaged because I'm not using what I'm really good at. So what else do I have in that situation? And my other strength is maximizer. So how can I apply maximizer, which has to do with creating excellence, to use that in this situation where I can apply that momentum, but how can I make this project excellent?
Right.
And that's something that I will get excited about when I look at it that way, because I'm using what I already do well and I'm just shifting what I'm focusing on.
That was kind of getting into my last question here for the interview today, because we have a few minutes left before we actually have to start our session here in the afternoon. What are some of your strengths, and how has really, starting your own company, I'm sure at this point you've probably been in front of thousands of people and done this type of training for thousands of people. How has it helped you find your strengths, and what are some of your top strengths, and how do they come out, doing this on an everyday basis?
Yeah, so one of the quotes that I originally wrote was, go after what gives you goosebumps.
Love that.
And I wanted to create the next chapter of my career and the next chapter in my life after spending 21 years in my last job. I wanted those next 20, 30, however many long years to be something that gave me goosebumps, where I looked forward to Mondays. And if you want to know how your culture is, ask your employees how they feel on a Sunday. And there were a lot of Sundays that I was getting that anxiety.
Those Sunday scaries, they say, right?
Yes, I had that towards the latter part of my time. And I wasn't excited to go to work, and I wanted to create something that brought that natural joy. And my strengths are, I am futuristic, I'm a maximizer, I have belief, I'm an arranger, and I'm an activator. So those are my top 5. And I use them every single day. They are sitting on my desk when I check in the morning, and I remind myself, I look to what the future could be. That's my futuristic. I think about where we could take this company, what else we can do, and how I can help other teams. I want to make things excellent. So for today, I want to help create excellence in how MoreVisibility is working. My belief, I'm grounded in a core set of core values, and the work that I do has to feel meaningful, and this work is meaningful. So every day I do it, I'm energized because I believe in it. I'm convicted. And as an arranger, I can move parts, I can shift, and this work, I'm always shifting who I'm working with and how to get the best out of it. And then my activator, when I'm in front of a team or an audience, I just love to inspire people. So my work has been here's another thing I'll say. My dream job wasn't hiring. I tried to create it in my organization for a year. So I decided to build my dream job and hire myself. And that's why I do what I do today.
Well, I'll share this with you then, so you know that your work definitely pays off. This entire podcast room that we're sitting in now did not even exist until after round 1.
Really?
Where I went through my strengths.
Oh my God.
Ironically, I had a meeting with who I report to, Danielle, and we just, we chatted about kind of what's next. I had started this podcast here at MoreViz. I think at that point I had done 41, 42 episodes. And I was like, I think it's time to take it to the next level because I love doing it. It's something that, you've tasked me and allowed me to lead and grow. I was like, I think we need a dedicated space. I think we need to elevate our game. I think we need more guests on. And literally a month, maybe a month and a half, 2 months later, we're here. So it's super powerful. And that's just a firsthand experience, and I'm sure it happens all the time. But I love that quote, go after what gives you goosebumps. I love doing the podcast. So when I sat down with Danielle, I didn't have this quote in mind, but I was thinking along the same way. She's like, what's next? And I was like, well, I could say that maybe I want to do X, Y, Z with clients, but let me just stop. I love doing that. Why don't we do more of that?
That's beautiful.
Why don't we bring it to the forefront? As a digital marketing company, we produce content every day. This is just another avenue of content. So it is very, very powerful, and we all have our strengths on our desks. Everyone leaves them there every day. So we come into work, we sit down, and we kind of take that same approach. Kelly, I want to give you the opportunity before we go to tell people how they can get in contact with you and start this process if they're interested in having you come and teach and have them learn about finding their own team strengths.
I just love that story you just told. That's why I do what I do. And see, it's not about that may not have been in your job description. And there's a lot of companies
Definitely wasn't.
that have job descriptions that wouldn't apply. But once your leader she asked you the question. And then you knew what fired you up, and feel your energy here today. You love what you're doing. We make it a part of your job description.
Right.
And see, that's what organizations need to hear. Get out of the box.
Yes.
Blow the box up.
Yes.
Blow it up.
Yes.
So how you can reach out to me, my email, kelly@thekellymerblercompany.com. My social media platforms, I'm a lot on LinkedIn. If you go to Kelly Merbler, that's a great place to connect with me. Obviously, Facebook and Instagram, I'm under Kelly Merbler Motivation. And then my website, if you want to just see the programs that I do for many organizations, from startups to Fortune 500 companies I've worked with, is kellymerblerco.com and kellymerblerco.com. So I appreciate this opportunity to serve your team. And I go back to when they called me Money Merbler for many, many years in my organization, because I chased those KPIs, those key performance indicators. And now today I've changed that name of KPIs, and now I chase keep people inspired. Those are the new KPIs of what I built my business around, because if we can tap into the heart of the people and lead with love, everything else will fall into place.
I couldn't agree more. Kelly, we're all excited for round 2. Thank you so much for coming by the podcast today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.